Ongoing professional support includes very good supervision with somebody who understands trauma dynamics, who will support me but both challenge me, who will look for any parallel process issues that are creeping into my work, like minimisation and denial. To continue to attend training, to have great peer conversations with people who do similar sort of work. I think at a personal level, it is important that I walk the talk. That means I have my own resiliency plan and that I implement my resiliency plan, and I think that keeps me authentic in my work with survivors of childhood sexual abuse, because one of the things I'll often talk with men about is making sure that they have their self-care plan, they have their resiliency plan, and sometimes we might share resiliency plans together, you know, in terms of how am I going and how's he going with his. So having an ongoing resiliency plan that I'm attending to in my work and personally. Making sure I get good time off, and I don't work therapeutically with men who've been sexually abused as children full time. So it's part of my work, but I don't do it full time. I don't know how people do this full time, but I think doing other sort of work gives you a break from the intensity of this sort of work. This work is at one level fatiguing, incredibly challenging, traumatising at times, but on the other hand, this work is incredibly stimulating. It's professionally rigorous, and one of the things about doing this work, even though on the negative we are confronted with some of the terrible acts that adults do to children, on the other hand, what I experience is the incredible tenacity of the human spirit. You know, I was working with a man the other day, and you know, I called him courageous in the session, and he said, "What do you mean I'm courageous? I'm not courageous." And I said to him, "Would you, compared to doing this work in therapy, would you prefer to jump in and save somebody drowning in a flooded river?" "Yes," he said. "Would you prefer to dive into a crocodile-infested swamp and, you know, save a child?" "Yes, I would," he said. And we went through a number of scenarios, and I said to him, all of those things that we talked about, you'd get a medal for bravery. And you're saying that they are easier to do than for you to sit here and to talk about your abuse. That's how courageous, that's how much courage it takes to look vulnerability in the eye and to deal with the sorts of issues that you've experienced as a child. So I think seeing men be so courageous and hang on to hope when it feels like there isn't any hope, and seeing that tenacity of the human spirit, that's what sustains me continuing to do this work.
I think we have a pretty great team, and there are plenty of opportunities, I think, to debrief with colleagues. Some of those are formal opportunities that we have now, which are really helpful, but a lot of it is informal as well, in understanding the pressures and difficulties at times. So a very supportive team, and opportunities within that to both ask for, to seek support, but also to offer it to others, I think is really important. Personally, I find having good work-life balance as far as I possibly can. I try and get exercise and also be creative in my time away from work. Often things that aren't language-based. I try to do, well, I guess exercise, you know, being physical, of course, trying to find that mind, body, spirit kind of balance in my personal time, so that when I do come to work, I'm feeling a bit refreshed and you know, energetic and ready for what might occur. Yeah, so those would be the things. I do think some continuing professional development is important, and it's hard to find the time and space for that, to continue refreshing one's counselling skills. learning new techniques and new strategies, new ideas, new ways of working. Otherwise you can, I think, continue to rework the same, and one needs to continue to feel competent, useful, excited and interested in the work that we do, and new methods and strategies I think is a good way to go about that. So finding time to read new material, new journals, all of those sorts of things is a challenge, but it's important I think to keep up your knowledge base as far as you can. I think it's given a sense of purpose. It's given, I think, confidence in feeling as though I have contributed to a process of change, both to the service itself, but to the men and their families that I've seen over the years. So, you know, that in itself is a very worthwhile thing. I think having meaningful work in good company is a very rewarding way to spend one's day.
Having good supervision, and that person who's supervising also has knowledge in the area of working with sexual assault, and also with knowledge of working with men who've experienced childhood sexual abuse or sexual assault. That's very important for me. It's about maybe not just individual supervision, but group supervision with fellow practitioners in that field is important. Separating out operational supervision and clinical supervision as well. That's key to not think that they're the same process. They're different sets of dynamics there. And yeah, so I suppose continuing education, learning from our clients, but also learning from you know, fellow practitioners and other people working in the field. Then there's also understanding myself and my life and my partner and family, and looking after myself. So, you know, I would do physical activity to try and, you know, de-stress. I have certain little habits that I have around taking, you know, a bit of time out for myself. So, you know, I think it's really critical that, you know, if we're going to ask our clients to do all this self-care, that we also do the self-care for ourselves. That, you know, being aware of, you know, whether I'm, you know, ruminating on certain thoughts, and if noticing that I'm doing that, not beating up on myself for doing that, but taking the time to, you know, get myself you know, focused on doing the things that I value, to recharge my batteries, taking my breaks, taking holidays around, you know, making sure I have a good few weeks off a year. That's really important to me. It usually takes me, I find, about a week or two to kind of really get myself out of that work headspace. And for me, it's about always leaving the city which I'm in. So that's you know, learnings that I've had over time. But also I walk to and from work if I can. I walk through a park. I kind of orient myself to work on the way to work, and I orient myself to home on the way home, or to where I'm going with friends. It's also keeping up with other things which give me energy, be it music or films, and, you know, taking time to listen and read things outside of the abuse. I think probably that was a learning for me when I worked in the domestic violence area, that when I started going out and looking at other people in restaurants and trying to work out whether it was domestic violence relationship or not, I decided that was the time I had to stop doing that work, or to take a break from that and look after myself. You know, I suppose I see this as meaningful work. And for me, that's my, you know, as I define it as meaningful work. I've had the privilege of sitting with people during kind of profound distress and profound despair, and for me, that you know, that came about in my, you know, before I came to directly doing the therapeutic work. I'd kind of been in some of those difficult situations, and so for me, understanding that that's what people's lives can be like. It's very difficult for me to understand not doing work which is about addressing some of that abuse history. It's also having been on a bit of a journey with people and watch change happen. And it doesn't often happen in this nice graded sort of response, particularly in groups and some individual stuff around working with men where they've had certain thoughts about themselves which have been present for decades, and then to watch that transformative kind of conversation where that no longer is kind of a major hold on that person's life and it opens up new opportunities. That's quite an incredible experience to participate with somebody in that, and I hope I never kind of lose that sense of wonder at the work. So for me, it's a rich and rewarding experience to do that, and I'm kind of. But it's very grounding for me as well. It's not all fun. Sometimes it's a real struggle, and it's holding in place. For me, there's both horror and hope in my work, and it's finding a way to hold that in my life. And so it contributes and probably gives me a very, I think, grounded, very rich understanding of life in all its complexity.
My colleagues are my biggest support. So we have regular supervision from our team leader and debrief with one another, especially after the group, the male group, for instance. We would always debrief afterwards and share our reflections on what had happened in the group. Reflective kind of practitioner ways of working are important. I think it's really important to think about what's come up in sessions and to be able to, think about how you plan the next session or what sorts of questions might be useful to kind of deepen the discussion, thicken up the discussion for the next time. Supervision's a big one, peer support, collegial support, and resourcing yourself, again, is really important, I think. All the self-care strategies that I talk through with my clients, they're the self-care strategies that I need to use as well, because it's fabulous work, I think, because we are seeing recovery and we're seeing bravery, we're seeing real moral courage and emotional courage to go through this kind of sometimes despairing work. And so I don't know if I quite agree with the term vicarious trauma. I think that takes away something of the experience of a victim survivor for me. I'm not sure if what we go through is trauma, but we certainly are impacted by hearing the stories, the traumatic stories, especially when it's happened to people as little children and by someone who owed them a duty of care. I think I find them most difficult because I'm a parent myself, and that can be, something that resonates with me in terms of my own child and my relationship with my child. And so I think it's really important we self-care, we model it, but we also make sure we're ready to renew ourselves, recharge our batteries. So things like yoga, meditation, mindfulness practice, lots of sleep, warm baths, long walks, whatever it is that we need to do to renew our energy around this work, because it does take, it's odd really, people have said to me, people who don't work in this field, and I've described sitting in like a crisis care unit. I also do crisis care unit work, which is at the coalface. So when someone presents at the hospital after a recent sexual assault, male, female, whoever, and I'll talk about how I'm often exhausted for a couple of days after, and I might have just been sitting and being with that person, supporting them through the process for 3 or 4 hours. And I'll say, but you were sitting down, like you're just having a chat. The emotional energy that goes into sitting and holding those sorts of stories is quite intense. So yeah, we do need to be really careful to look after ourselves. There's a very high burnout rate in this sort of field, and not just a high burnout rate, but I think people can become very cynical very quickly because the legal system isn't fantastic, and because we don't see great outcomes often at court for people, or we see people who are, as I said before, harangued by the defence attorneys. So it's so important we keep a positive kind of energy going, because that offers up hope to people that there is something, they're wading through monstrous stuff, but there is hope for them, and holding those moments in our heads professionally. I'm back on professional now. I've gone from personal back to professional, but holding those moments in our heads is really important. We actually have a little celebration here each fortnight. We in group supervision where we have we made a little cauldron, and we put sparkling moments into it. So when we've had a therapeutic moment where something has really shifted for a person, or there's been a fantastic kind of court outcome, or whatever it is, it might be the first time that person's been able to be assertive with someone, and they've been talking joyously about it in a session. We try and hold on to them. So the vicarious inspiration moments, if you like, I think that's really important for us to do professionally too. For me, it is a constant source of joy, despite how difficult the work can get. It's a constant source of joy to see how damn resilient the human spirit is. That we all have such a strong and innate desire to heal and to recover from trauma. And hearing some of the things, some of the life experiences that people have been through, and to watch them really sometimes claw their way back to a sense of safety and well-being and worthiness, a belief in their own worthiness, is a constant source of inspiration to me. I often write a letter to people at the end of their time of service with us and talk about all the things I've learned from them, so it's a celebration of them, because I think it's a two-way process, and I learn as much as I offer up, I think, sometimes. So yeah, for me it's a real joy to watch the human spirit at its finest, I think.
To get outside the organisation for supervision it's crucial. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to separate ourselves, sometimes organisationally. I guess there's a culture in every organisation, and at times we may not always agree with that. So being able to step outside and speaking to someone who's, I guess, more objective is really important. I'm a strong believer in self-care, and I talk about it all the time here. I'm probably one of the biggest advocates amongst the staff. I don't live for work. I have to come to work, otherwise I couldn't live. Because I have strong beliefs outside of work and strong interests. Work isn't my life, and I think that's a danger of work. If work does become your life, I think it just adds more to the potential for vicarious trauma. I also make sure I connect with my children and grandchildren. Having their view on the world is wonderful. Particularly grandchildren, being with them and being exposed to how they perceive the world and explore the world is a wonderful place. So, there's a lovely balance there. I get involved in getting my hands in the earth, so I like to be very grounded. I do lots of gardening. I'm creative in whatever I do outside of work. I don't read about work at home. At times I think that's a disadvantage to me, but I don't want to be doing that at home. So I keep work and my personal life very separate.
It just reminds me that that we're all fellow travellers, and doing this work. I just feel very grateful that I'm doing it, because I get to meet people and have a sense of depth and intimacy that a lot of people don't have in their work. To me, it's deeply rewarding, and I get to learn about the human condition more and more every day, about clients and about myself. So it brings a lot of gratitude and appreciation.
Good to talk to people who care about the same thing. You get, it can be wearing, you can get quite black. That sort of conversation helps to cast a bit of light and put a bit of positivity back into the situation sometimes. If those guys leave us a couple of years later as skilled, happier, more confident people. That is brilliant. That's the kind of thing that keeps us going. Even seeing that in small increments, you know, just like in the room, working with a guy from week to week, can be really rewarding. I also think it's honourable work. I like to think that because I do this work, I can, you know, feel a little bit okay about myself in what's often a terrible world and not necessarily getting any better for most of us. This, you know, this is the real deep stuff, and that's beautiful.
I work in an organisation where the care of workers is given importance, just as much as care of the people that we work with. To me, that's, you know, a very general ethic, I suppose, of care, and that means being able to be honest with your colleagues about the times that you're struggling, being able to share things that are going well and having that celebrated, having some sense of influence in the work that you do, whether it's the way, you know, whether it's the way cases are allocated or a particular project that you think would be important to be involved in as a sexual assault service. You know, for me personally, having a partner who is very supportive of me doing the work and thinks that it's valuable and important work to do. Having colleagues in the field, being able to debrief with, staying in touch with, on a personal level, staying in touch with the things that I just enjoy, really, like making sure I make time to listen to music and play music and go and see music. That's a bit of a theme. Recognising that I'm in a position that someone places an enormous amount of trust in to be able to share incredibly painful and difficult and personal aspects of their life really forces me as well to see myself as someone who's capable of being in that position, which is quite a, you know, a moving and humbling thing, I think, to think that I have those qualities and those capacities, and I think being able to acknowledge that we often don't kind of acknowledge the things that we do well or that the you know, good qualities that we have, because it feels like that's being arrogant or it feels like that's being pretentious. But, you know, when we think about the work we're doing with clients, we often really celebrate those times where they've seen something good about themselves or achieved something that's really they're proud of and is really important and meaningful to them. And I think through doing this work, that's kind of enabled me to do that for myself a bit more.
Me personally, I journal as well. I write a bunch of stuff, just because writing and seeing it helps me see patterns that, you know, the flow of the day or the week I might not pick up. And then doing lots of other stuff. So I love to travel, and when I leave this building and I travel, I don't think about work. That capacity to, so there's a 15-minute drive from here to when I get home. And I have a discipline of noticing if my mind is coming back to this building or a client on that drive, I'm conscious about doing what I encourage my clients to do to control where I focus my attention. So I will stop thinking about back, because I can't do anything. Whatever it is I'm thinking about, I can't do anything about it until I'm back in the office. So let it go, and I focus, so what am I going to do when I get home? Or look at the clouds on that mountain, or shift my attention away from here. And if I only have to do it a couple of times, by the time I get home, I'm no longer thinking about my clients or work. It's a conscious choice to have the rest of my life about me, to sit with a person experiencing that and really grasp the human cost of how we treat each other. And then to really grasp how amazing the human capacity to keep living, to keep trying to find a way to get back to health, to keep trying to find a way to live and love and be a parent and be a decent human being and actually have a reason for living when everything in you tells you other. People just keep making the effort. And that sense of how amazing humans are, whether you attribute that to Creator God or to evolution, I think either is equally amazing when you see it in people, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, is inspiring human beings, telling me what's possible, showing me what's possible. And that hope, even in just horrendous circumstances, hope's a real thing, and it's a powerful thing, and that there's much more of it in people than you might generally get from our cultural discourse. So in the 3 years that I've been working here, my sense of humanity has deepened, it's risen, it's expanded, and I'm prouder of being human now than I was 3 years ago. From a personal perspective, I find working with these clients inspiring. Like, I'm so vastly more impressed and inspired by my clients than by the malignant things that were done to them, that my worldview is actually more positive now than it was when I started here 3 years ago. My sense of what humans are capable of and how amazing human beings are, because of what I've seen and shared with my clients, it's just increased dramatically.